One man with one microphone who once booked a flight to Morocco for the wrong month. Welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another session of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. In today's session, I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing John Hanson, the co-founder of Confidential Music. We had such a nice chat. Obviously, not just chat about, the weather, because the weather over here is a bit drizzly. But, we talked about him and his life and his career, and we got into so much detail. And it's, the wonderful thing about these interviews for me is the story, hearing how people got into what they're doing. And John has such a wonderful story about how he sort of got his foot in the door, as it were. Now, actually, we had such a nice chat that it kind of went on for about 2 hours. So rather than kind of like load you guys with a serious long-form episode, I'm going to split it up into 2 parts. So this week we're going to get part 1. And in this half of the interview, John talks about, his days in choir and desire to become a film composer. And then he tells us a hilarious story of how he later got a job at Remote Control to intern for Klaus Badelt. Then he went on to work as an assistant in immediate music, and then launching his own company and career. It was such a fun interview, and John does not hold back in delivering so much value and insight. Not just the values of being a good, original, and thought-provoking composer, but also, your approach to pursuing any passion. It's just gold. So much fun. Such a lovely guy. Enjoy the interview, guys. John, welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. I'm so chuffed to have you on the show.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome, dude. You're welcome. So for those in the audience who, I'm sure most people do know who you are, but for those of the in the audience who don't know who you are and your output, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are now, and how you got there?
Sure. Yeah, I've been, I'd say, let's see, I've been in the industry I guess the music scoring industry for probably a little over 16 years. I started actually in college. I kind of got interested in doing film music. I kind of had this moment in my sophomore, junior year of college where I was like, am I going to be a singer-songwriter or, something else like a jingle writer or something? I don't know. And I kind of made the choice to go more in the scoring, jingle, whatever it was going to be way, because I felt like I could perfect it. Whenever I performed and stuff, I was never able to there was always something wrong. It's like, oh, I wish I had done this or whatever. But so I ended up going down that road, and I ended up interning for Klaus Badelt at the time it's called Media Ventures. Now it's called Remote Control Productions, and worked for him for 2 years. Basically started just by getting coffee, and then ended up making a lot of sample instruments for him, programming, kind of being a technical supervisor per se. And then ended up finishing that job, but then going to work for another remote control composer, and then wanting to kind of go off on my own. And when I went off on my own, I met through kind of looking for steady work, I met Yoav Gorin and Jeff Feynman. And then ended up working as an assistant for them on some big projects they were doing with like full orchestra and all this. So from there I got to they really were really amazing to work with, because they allowed me to, like, they would give me briefs not knowing like any, like they're just like, hey, you want to try something for this, and I'm just this little knucklehead, like, oh yeah, I'll try something, that sounds fun. And starting kind of like from there, and like not knowing really what I'm doing, but them giving me an opportunity to like pitch something for it. And so that, I think that really was a testament to their kind of like, allowance, was like that progressive nature, but also just it was just a real big blessing for me. And so kind of they guided me through kind of the form, and also just working with them was inspiring and stuff. So about 8 years ago, I ended up kind of wanting to branch out, and also to have my own company, but also maybe do films and have a little more flexibility with my schedule and stuff. So I ended up starting confidential music with my engineer buddy that was at a media as well, Kyle Bian. And so then we created confidential music, and that was our kind of aim was to put out 7 tracks 5 times a year, and just go forward with that, and just kind of make it very simple and stuff like that. And thankfully we've had success in kind of like with those releases, and then people also contacting us for custom stuff, and been able to work on Star Wars and some of the Avengers and these type of films, and it's just been crazy that they kind of all I guess beat on themselves and build on the other one. But I think that it's been a fun ride, and stoked to be doing work in this industry.
Yeah. Also, just fantastic work as well.
Oh, cheers.
Your work is brilliant. It's got such a unique sound to it. You're doing epic, but it's not. I can listen to it and go, oh, that sounds like Confidential. Oh, it is. Oh, great, awesome. So no, sure. Also that's a really nice thing to have a unique sound. When especially when you're dealing with broad brushstrokes like epic trailer music. It's very easy to sound like run of the mill. But I love your work. So but before I carry on praising your work anymore, I want to just ask you a couple of questions. You skimmed over some really like big things, and I get it, because you're just doing this is the summary. The first thing is, like, when did you get into music? Because you said about college, being a singer-songwriter, or what? When was it? Was it like 4 years old, violin?
No. Well, I was always, so in church we always sang, like there was like big hymn sing kind of thing. So I like singing and music and this kind of thing was just kind of like something that we do. It wasn't like you have to get into it per se. It was just part of life. But I wanted to actually be an architect. And in junior high, I was like, yes, I'm going to be an architect. I'm going to build houses. I'm going to design houses. This is like Lego, like a Lego dreamer kind of mind. And so I wanted to go into, when I went into junior high, I was like, Dad, I want to take wood shop and this and that. He's like, no, you're taking choir. And I thought that was like the worst possible situation, that he was going to make me take choir and I wanted to, to fulfill my dream of an architect. It's the best thing he's ever made me do, because I actually then got in choir, and I really enjoyed kind of like this kind of like corporate like everyone's doing this thing. I've never been in an orchestra before. I've never been anything. So this kind of like someone's guiding it, someone's you're reading the notes with other people there in harmony, this whole thing. And I was the only guy in the choir, so that was a bonus. But yeah, so I kind of like ended up going in that direction, and then started kind of teaching myself guitar and writing songs in like high school. And I was like really into Dashboard Confessional and like, just like
Love
super
Dashboard.
emo kind of like acoustic rock, and like, this guy's screaming at the top of his lungs and just playing his guitar as loud as he can. And it's just amazing. It's this most simple kind of like thing, but very emotional. So I got kind of obsessed with this idea that it wasn't that you needed a lot of instruments to be emotional, or you needed more things. It was just that what you had, just use that. And I felt like the best music that I ran into was ones that they just took what they had, and that's what made it amazing. So like, for instance, when I first wrote anything for digital music, I had this Kurzweil like weighted keyboard, old thing. What is it? I can't remember the model, but like the only sounds it has are like maybe some strings and some like lots of marimbas, like hundreds of marimbas. I don't know why so many marimbas, but it wasn't like the amazing like options, right? But I kind of put myself to like writing a score with this keyboard and only the sounds in the keyboard. And it was really challenging, but after it, I was like, you know what? It's important to take what you have and make that interesting, and not always be looking out like, oh, I wish I had, if I only had this, then my music would be amazing, And I think that principle kind of I want to hang on to, and it's an important thing, I think, for my conceptualization of music is to use what you have. So that's kind of where it was birthed, I'd say.
I could not agree more. Like I'm
Mm.
always saying about like sort of fasting from buying new libraries, because
Right.
you need to like you need to focus on the ones you've got first,
Yeah.
because you don't need a ton of libraries.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Oh mate, I love that you mentioned Dashboard Confessional. So yeah, casting back to myself, trying to sing those high notes and
Oh yeah, man.
failing.
But do it, whatever, man.
Big time. Yeah. Now, so fast forward. So you've obviously been in the choir. Also, I love the fact that you've almost got like the flip of the stereotypical father-son thing. You're like, Dad, I'm going to get a proper job. I'm going to become an architect. He's like, no, you're going to become a musician or go into choir.
Yeah, totally.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. Totally. So fast forward. So you've gone to college, you've made the decision, I'm going to get into composing. Now you're like, oh yeah, then I just landed this role helping out Klaus, at Hans Zimmer's place, So how did that come about? I mean, that for a lot of people is like the Willy Wonka golden ticket, really. So how did you?
Right. Yeah, it's actually a kind of miracle of a story. So, and my business partner loves to tell it for me, which is funny. But it's like, you gotta hear how John got into Klaus's place. So there was like, I don't know if it was Craigslist or something, but some place where they're like music assistant needed at it may be at Media Ventures. I don't know. It was like in Santa Monica. I don't know if it was very direct. So I emailed for it, this lady named Sinead, and Sinead Hartman. I don't know if she got back to me, but it was kind of like, can you be an intern, this and that. And we may have had like one email of correspondence, but it kind of like fell away. It didn't like materialize in anything. I maybe sent my resume or something, but it didn't materialize. But I had her name somehow because maybe she emailed me back or something. So I got her name. And I, one day I was going into Santa Monica and my wife was like, oh, you should just pop by Media Ventures and see, this place that you're wanting to work and just see if you can work there, just see if you can talk to somebody. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a silly idea, but okay. So I went and I'm just really young, so I don't know anything about security or anything. And I like parked out front and I noticed that as I'm like going by it, that it's like Fort Knox. They have like so much security, like gates and like this and like intercom and like, oh, you can't just walk in, dang it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get out of the car. So I get out of the car, I start walking towards the door and it must've been like within that minute or something that the mailman came, and the mailman had his, mailbox. And he had gone in, but he left his mailbox in the door so that the door was open. He left for whatever reason. He wanted the door to be open. So I stepped over the mailbox and went to the front desk and I said, I'm here to see Sinead Hartman.
That's amazing.
Because I knew that name and I knew that she worked there or whatever. And then the mailman, left and whatever. So she comes down the around the corner, kind of like looking around the corner, like, I think I know your name. Cause I said, oh, it's John Hanson. I don't know, whatever. She's like kind of around the corner, like, who are you? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't have an interview or an appointment with you. I just want to work here. I'll clean toilets. I'll get people coffee. I don't care. I just want to work here. And she kind of like looks at me and she's like, you're so cute. Let's talk. So we go over to the table and she gives me an interview right there and hires me. Wow. And so, yeah, like that was like, one of those moments. And now forever, whenever I pass a mailman, I'm like, thank you. Thank you for you. Yeah. But yeah, so that was kind of like my entrance into there. And I just started like cutting samples. They had a bunch of interns cutting samples.
So had you had any experience doing audio editing at that point? Or was it just like, here's a computer, that's how you cut a sample, go?
I had worked in like Pro Tools and stuff. My dad had like some stuff like that. So I wasn't like completely obtuse or whatever, but yeah, like most of my job with Klaus actually was programming and technical. It's like getting to know the computer. I mean, there's one assignment where it was like our mail server went down, which he had his personal mail server, fix the mail server. He was in China.
Wow.
Fix it. So overnight, I taught myself as much of Unix as I could and figured out how to, because the database had become corrupted, and stayed up, I don't know, a day and a half trying to figure it out and rebuilt the database. But that was like, that's not connected to music, but it was very important and informative.
Wow. That's that's a pretty broad ranging job then.
Yeah.
Wow. So
yeah, because I think it's almost more in the first, and I'd say this to any composer kind of like coming up, that at the beginning, it's not really about music. I mean, you have to have that maybe the dream in your heart to keep you going and to be like, that's where I want to go. But it's more about like you being a hard worker and also just listening to who you're working for, and what do they need, this kind of idea. And you prove yourself not as a musician, but as a kind of like someone who's trustworthy, someone who like can do good at a task. And then it becomes more, they're willing to then let you sit down at the computer and edit something, or you know what I mean? They're more willing to, as a person, to communicate with you, and because they trust you from doing whatever.
Yeah, I just want to say to the listeners right now that what John is saying is absolute gold. Absolute gold. From my experience of working with, aspiring composers, the ones that have proved themselves in other areas as either trustworthy or reliable or hardworking are the ones that then go on to do all the other work. So yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of too like almost like a bit of a pairing. You have to pair it, a wine pairing per se, with, you pair that hardworking, that attitude, like I'm going to be, this is the standard I'm going to hold myself to. And you pair it with, am I learning? Like, am I moving forward in what I want, where I want to go? So as long as those things is like, you are focused on like your character over here, and then over here you are, you're aware that you're still growing. So you don't want to be in a place where you're 5 years and you're still getting coffee, you're still this. It's almost like, yes, you prove that, but then at the same time, make sure that you're getting closer and closer to that goal, that you are getting closer, because then it may be time, if you're kind of like stagnating in what you're learning, like every day you should be like, oh, I didn't know how to do that, everyday learning. If you're kind of like every day you're just doing the same thing, then maybe it's time to move on, that kind of thing. That's kind of like the click in your mind.
Big time. I think also it's a really important thing to note in your kind of like wonderful postman story is to take note about people who are open to opportunity. That is a huge thing. First of all, applying to this role that you saw in the papers. The second of all, driving to the place. Like, who does that, John? I mean, like, oh, they've got an ad, I'm going to go and drive to their building, and then, and then even when you see the gates and all the security being like, oh, the side door's open, I'm gonna run on in, all right, guys, how you doing? I'm going to work here.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful example of like
great.
Opportunities being given, but just not necessarily in really obvious ways. And take them. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's crazy.
Right, I feel like I should tell that story to people now. Do you know how? That's great. You know what? It's made me forget what my next question was going to be. So yeah, had you had any programming experience or anything like that, or was it literally like you had a little bit of dabbling in Pro Tools, jump in?
Yeah, I mean, even to be honest, like even if you program outside of music stuff, or if you just get to know a program in general, like I was obsessed with PageMaker, which was like an early kind of like Adobe, before Photoshop and before Illustrator, PageMaker, and it was like just making shapes and changing shades and stuff like that. I think that programming is about a way of thinking, and it's like, and it's so whether it's something simple on an iPad, just figuring out how a program works, teaching yourself by trial and error how far you can push a program, how much you can do with it. All those things add into your ability then to go into a completely new program and a new environment, and to apply those concepts and those those ideas into that program, because then you'll pick it up very quick. And it was very similar. They were actually using some other program to edit with, but it was building on other concepts. that kind of like gave me the ability to actually do it, to learn it quicker. Be like, oh, okay, you just need to cut, or this, or you need to select this, and this is how you do it in this program. It's kind of like translates over. I have a similar story about learning to orchestrate, but maybe later.
Well, so the postman was there offering lessons to orchestrate.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And then the postman came and you want some lessons. Yeah, it was basically that.
Amazing. Yeah, so it's you're absolutely right. It's kind of like you kind of learn a vocabulary when you learn one piece of software. It's like learning to script in Contact. You realize that transferable scripting skills from there can be used in other pieces of software as well.
Exactly. And I think that too, we kind of try to get past the programming because it's a nuisance. Because it's not music. It itself is not the wonder of music. It's just something that's like almost, it feels at times like it stands between you and music. So if you give yourself to it though, you actually get closer to the music, and it becomes less of an obstacle and more of like working with you.
It's like practicing an instrument.
Exactly.
At first, it feels like a complete obstacle, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, this is pretty good."
Exactly, and the computer is an instrument.
Yep, big time. So, what was the funnest job you did? So, did they change it to remote controlled whilst you were there, or was it?
Yeah. It was actually in the process of being changed when I was there. Yeah.
Okay, so what was the most fun work you did? Because so far it sounds pretty dry,
Oh yeah, I mean, I did a lot of sampling projects actually, and one of the coolest things was when Klaus got a Chinese movie, and he decided he was going to actually go to China to score it. And I think he was gone 3 months. I don't know.
Nice.
Something like that. But that was a lot of fun because we had to figure out a way, and this was before like fast internet. So we had to figure out a way to, he was sampling string orchestras, brass orchestras, brass sections, all these flutes, a ton of like ethnic instruments, but he was sampling them, and then he'd send back the audio files. Yeah, just a fascinating kind of process because, like, trying to figure out how to get these massive files, so they ended up sending MP3s. I'd cut the MP3s, and then I'd have like a script basically that would run, that would cut everything after I put markers in, and then the script, and they would open up that same file, but with the real, because they were named the same, so they could open up the same logic session with the real files, run the same script, and then it would cut everything and bounce everything, and they would be able to open up because they'd have the exact same files, so it's named all the same. They'd open up the instrument and work, and it would like these cool. Like kind of like massive like string, kind of like 5 layers string patches, and like so that was like a fun experience, crazy, working with different time zone and everything.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So so that would have been what, Logic, I guess Logic 7?
Oh, that was before it was owned by Apple. So it was like
5?
eMagic days, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Back when it was on the PC as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think they had a Logic, a Mac version, but it was like, when Logic was like 70 million windows, like you could open up a window for everything.
I'm not sure. I think I started on, it was either 5, 6, or 7. I can't remember. It was still on the PC.
Yeah, okay.
And it was still the layout was still relatively similar to actually what it is now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because before that, I was on Cakewalk Pro, which became, which Adobe bought it. I can't remember what it then became.
Oh, really? Really? Did they put it into their whatever?
You know the one. It's their sound design audition. That's it. Yeah, that's what it became.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, good times. Where you're sat there going, how do I do this again?
Yeah, totally.
Right. Okay, so you've got this job at, then it becomes remote control. At
Right.
what point do you meet Jeff and Yoav from Immediate Music?
Totally. I was kind of feeling that like at some point where I wasn't necessarily learning something and I wasn't actually like progressing. And one of the hardest things actually is to leave remote control when you're there, because the sense is that when you are there that you've made it, and if you leave, that means you are giving up your dream of making it. And so it's very difficult actually to kind of leave that type of atmosphere, but it was a very important thing as well, at least for me. And I'm happy that I did. So I ended up like leaving to basically try to get my own films. I was like, I'm gonna get my own films, yeah, and like got some like student films and stuff like this. But quickly found out that like maybe I needed something still that was steady, that I could still do this, so I could do both. I really at remote control, it's like you're there all the time, so you don't really have the option to like do your own thing unless someone trusts you enough to do that. So I sent out some emails. The first one I sent out was to Immediate Music. I didn't know they actually did trailer music. It just said like production music, or whatever. It's like, cool, movies, production music. I have no clue what this is. And then Yoav, basically he saw that I work with Klaus and stuff. And so he brought me in for an interview, showed me trailer music in his home studio, and I was like listening, and I'm like, whoa, this music is over the top. What is going on? It's like, this is like, and we're being serious about this, kind of like, I was like, wow, this is like, I've never heard like in this context, just listening to this like massive music, it was just a new experience. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do this for the time being. Like, I'm gonna be a film composer when I grow up, kind of thing. So that's kind of how it started. And then I did like a bunch of assistant work, kind of surrounding a big orchestra date, a few orchestra dates, like weeks of orchestra dates, actually. But then like, yeah, it started kind of like growing and developing that, and then started really liking it because it was something that you could kind of like focus on and like do something for a movie, and then it could be done. It wasn't like, with scoring, it was like go into a cave for 2 months, and when you come out, you'll have a score. It was much more like, segmented like that, which there's benefits to both. But so I liked it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that I got to spend more time with my family. It was for quality of life. I enjoyed a lot more, just because it was, it just seemed more life-giving. I was able to do that, but also to do other things. And so it wasn't that like, I didn't feel like my job was like sinking me. And that was very important to me. Actually, and it remains very important to me. But yeah.
I think that's actually one of the most wonderful things about trailer music.
Yeah.
Is it, if you do it right, it can give you such a wonderful sense of freedom. And you can readdress the balance of your life and work. Yeah. So for me, it was the same. Really important that I was around for my kids.
Yeah.
And it's been wonderful. So thank you, Trailer Music.
Yeah, exactly. Very thankful.
Funnily enough,
still in the score realm, it's not like full blown like ad music or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Don't knock ad music.
Yeah, I'm getting into ad music too, so we're all there.
It's fun to be cheesy. Oh, mate. In fact, actually, it's a similar thing. A friend introduced me to Jeff and Yo's, what was it? Globus.
Oh yeah.
Their commercial release stuff.
Yeah,
And
right.
I'd not heard it before, and I was like, "What is this? It sounds like Carmina Burana on steroids,
Totally.
But no, I loved it, and obviously, their music was kind of all over trailers around that time.
Yeah, right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
big time. So they brought you on board. What was the role? Was it a composer assistant? Was it paper boy?
Yeah, yeah. He was a composer assistant, I'd say, probably. Again, kind of a technical aspect to it, administrative type of aspects. But I'd say that they were much more willing to hear new ideas when it came to music. And maybe that's because of the industry too. And it just being like, you can pitch stuff. It doesn't hurt us to have you like write something, and we'll see if it's good enough to send them or whatever, And so that was really kudos to them to giving, again, this young kid who's a nobody to like, an opportunity in that.
Yeah, I think they've got a wonderfully generous approach to their
Yep.
work and who they work with. And
Yes.
it's, my experience was it wasn't just sort of working with them as a library. It was kind of like Jeff's kind of sits you down. Obviously, he didn't sit me down because I'm not in Santa Monica. Sits you down and goes, "So this is a great idea. Now let's see what we can do with this."
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh wow, that's cool. Thanks, Jeff."
Yeah. That was the experience, and it was sitting down with, for me, being there, and then yeah, but just really that kind of mentality that was like, let's make the best thing we can. And I think that's why Jeff and Yo work really well together too, is because they both had really sometimes really different ideas, but they were willing to like fully hear the other person out. And so they knew that process of kind of like this back and forth, disagreeing with one another, actually made a better product. And it brought out something that both of them together, achieved, but maybe not one apart from the other,
Yeah.
in certain cases.
And it's a good example of the sum of the parts is
better
than the whole. Yeah, big time. So what point did they kind of say, okay, why don't you start pitching stuff? And I presume it was sort of under the immediate music label.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe 4 months in or something, or maybe even sooner. But yeah.
How long does it take you to land anything?
I think we may have gotten lucky with the first one I did.
Oh, nice. 4 months in, boom.
Like, the funny thing was, it was like some like comedy, where they used to do a lot of jazz and comedy, like bam, 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 this kind of stuff. So it was kind of like really like right by the script, but that was actually important too, because then you like just make this sound the best that you can, this vibe.
Yeah.
And it was just like part of a trailer. It was just like a middle section or something. And I think we landed that one. Yeah. I think Yoav helped a lot too, with maybe some like programming on top of what I did, but he allowed me to do the bass.
Yeah. That's awesome. So was it at that point where you were like, maybe
it was definitely a I was like, oh, it's kind of like, this is how it works. I think I can accomplish something here, and I can, work hard at something. it's, like uh, one of the great immediate music composers is Alexander Dmitrievic, and his they were working with him a lot on stuff, and I kind of came in when they had a lot of his cues. So listening to those, and I'd be like, how on earth is there so much stuff in here, but kind of like de- de- decomposing some of that, and like, oh, okay, there's like a motor, and there's, kind of like different ways of kind of analyzing other composers, and obviously Jeff and Yo's stuff too. It's just like, it's so beyond you at the time, but then you kind of like learn like what it's made of and stuff. And so
Yeah, there's set components that have certain roles in all of the tracks where you're like, okay, as you say, you call it a motor, but okay, that's the driving point, and then
yeah,
and then you go, oh, actually, it's just a 4-part harmony, but it's just layered like a lot.
yeah. So many layers.
Yeah, but the layers sound so good. So at what point did you then meet Kyle, who is your now business partner at
Yeah, so I met Kyle like probably halfway through my tenure at Immediate Music. Was kind of looking for a studio engineer. I like an engineer, kind of like house engineer, and he worked with us on a date where Kyle was one of the most unique people I've met, and because when he was like an assistant to the engineer that we were working on, but he was just like everything and anything. It was almost like that idea of like, if a paper starts to fall off the table, Kyle would be there. Like, he'd be like, here's the paper, like this kind of guy, attention to detail, making sure that everything runs, where almost like he is both completely there and also not in the way, not like, and by the way, here's your paper, that kind of thing. So he had this amazing balance of this, and I was like, we have to get this guy into our studio and like have him part of the team, because it's just such a great work ethic. We can learn a lot from him, and it was almost like that was more important than any skill he had. He's very skilled, but that wasn't really the importance of getting him in. It's like, he's gonna, if he doesn't know it, he's gonna learn it, because I know from your work ethic that you're like, you're going to work as hard as you can to make that a priority. So we started working, and then we were actually working in one studio together. I would be composing, he'd be mixing. We'd both be doing different projects in the same like tiny little box of a room, but then we collaborate on stuff. And we grew in friendship, and then yeah, just kind of that same kind of feeling, like at some point that we both had a same idea of like of that work-life balance, maybe starting our own thing, kind of this kind of thing. And so that's why we ended up starting our own thing.
So you formulated the idea for Confidential Music. I mean, when did you decide, just correct me if I'm wrong, that it's 5 releases a year?
Yeah. I mean, we're both number geeks, so 365 days in a year, and then that's evenly divided 5 times by 73, right? So every 73 days, we're going to have a release, and it's just going to be, no matter what, people aren't even going to like maybe catch on that it's every 73 days, but that's going to be the thing. We're never going to miss the deadline.
There'll be clients listening going, oh, they do it every 73 days.
Yeah. So early thing, we had like a countdown, that was like on our website, on our silly website, that was like 73-day countdown, and it would refresh every 73 days. And people didn't even know what it was for, and just like, but that was like the point. It was just to be like super secretive. I mean, confidential music, the name came from this idea of like everyone in the industry is like, oh, this, don't tell anybody about this really top secret thing, blah, blah, blah. So we just wanted to play on that and be like, okay, well, we're going to be confidential music, like it's going to be super secretive and kind of random. But kind of like, and at the beginning, we were like, okay, let's focus on music alone. We can go and focus on artwork and all these things, but let's just, all that we can, just put it towards the music and try to keep the artwork, all this stuff as simple as possible. And so that it would just be like this, like, here's 7 tracks, here's 7 tracks, here's 7 tracks, and just get it out. It gives us something to do. And then also, we'd have custom stuff come in.
So 7 tracks per release?
Per release, yeah.
Is that because 7 is a very powerful number?
7. Yes, it's very powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
7 Harry Potter books. Come on.
It was arbitrary. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so there was no number geekness on the 7, even though.
Well, no, I mean, 7's awesome. That's why. Yeah, yeah, it's a powerful, like, perfection. It's kind of like this. And we also didn't want to overdo it. There's like this, I think, a balance between too little and too much, obviously. And then in this industry, at least back then, and I think now too, it's like, they're always music supervisors and stuff like that are surviving on new things. So for us to have something new was very important. But I don't want to oversaturate the new as well, because then you just have a bunch. In 6 months, you have 50 tracks that are old, So you kind of like parsing it out like that was our way to say, okay, this is going to be, you're going to have new music every 73 days. Yeah. So that's kind of where that was birthed from. And then we're just like, that's just the way it's going to be. I think if you have a plan, it's good. You just stick with your plan. You just go for it. And for us, it's also, that's a self-inflicted thing, right? It's like, so we think we have to like do this. Like, we're convinced, we have to get this out on time. And we've convinced ourselves of that. And then we have custom stuff that we intersperse, but it keeps us busy.
Nice.
Always something to kind of be going towards and stuff.
So is Confidential still just you and Kyle, or is the team expanded? What's going on with the company at present?
So, yeah, thank you. It is, my sister also works for us now. Her name is Becky. And yeah, she sang on like Suicide Squad and she sang on a few things, but so she works like operations side mostly, and keeps us sane. And so it's been us 3 as the like core team, and then we have also some people who have contributed tracks as well, and things like this, and people that we work with on a regular basis. We have a percussionist that we have worked with on every release. So all 40 releases that percussionist is on, and he's a great friend. And also just really inspiring to be around. Now he like knows the language. We can do stuff really, really quickly together. We have more percussionists than just him now, but he's kind of like the central team when it comes to live recording. Because we always record percussion on every release, but then we try to do past that. But we try to give something live on every release, and percussion has been the one thing that we're like, we will always do percussion.
So that's
for whatever Yeah, but, yeah.
That's really refreshing, because normally the go-to is, well, if we're going to record anything live, it's either going to be top line strings or it's going to be brass.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's
which both of those are really they add a lot. We just chose percussion because actually it's the most scalable. It's like, if we go down to the bass, percussion is actually going to be like something that gives us the most, I mean, to use a pun, bang for your buck, like for what you can do. So if we have this type of budget, or if we have a big budget, whatever it is.
Yeah, okay, I get it. Which it's funny, actually. I've never really twigged, but one of the things that makes the tracks recognizable of yours is the percussion. Specifically the way it sits in the mix. There's I can't remember the name of the track. Something to do with Voyager. It's the one you did for Interstellar.
Sure.
Bloody love that. It's a great cue, and I think that track for me kind of represents how the percussion sits in the mix. It's got a lovely kind of crisp nature. So that I never really thought that, this is recorded. I just thought, they've done something nice with their timpani,
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll tell Kyle that he'll be stoked to hear that. He's always that's the wonderful thing about Kyle too. Is he's never satisfied. Every release, he's like, I have a great idea. It's gonna change everything. Seriously, every release, 40 releases in, it's gonna change everything. Believe me. Like, let's do it. Let's do everything different. Whatever. But nice. But he's always kind of like, trying to make that balance work. Yeah.
So there we have it. That was the end of part 1. You'll have to, I'm afraid, wait another week until you hear the second half of the interview, part 2. But I do hope you enjoyed it. And as ever, if you are intrigued about getting into trailer music, head on over to thetrailermusicschool.com. If you want to kickstart your career as a composer, then head on over to protege.school and sign up to the waitlist for our year-long masterclass in writing for trailers, TV, film, games. It's amazing, just amazing. So thanks again, guys, for taking your time to listen. You are absolute legends. I'll see you next week.